SmackDown wins again. What is up? GoodMicWork back at you with episode 401. In this episode, we're going to briefly recap the January 9th and 10th edition of RAW and SmackDown and take a look at the updated Royal Rumble card coming up in a few weeks on January 29th. And at the end of the commentary, I've got like a half a dozen other news items I also want to get into as well, including my thoughts on WrestleMania 34, Ravishing Rick Rude, a new WWE Network show, Chris Hero returning to NXT, WrestleKingdom 11, and even a wrestling death. So we've got a lot to get into tonight, so I'm not going to waste any time. To be perfectly honest, I have a very, very busy week this week at work, and I was even a little bit nervous that I would not find the time to come up here and do a commentary at all this week, but given what we saw on Raw and SmackDown this week and everything else going on, I thought the events were big enough for me to find time to come up here and do a commentary. I do want to thank everyone for the awesome feedback and love I got on episode 400 a few days ago, my top 10 favorite wrestlers. If you haven't seen it yet, please check it out. Link is in the top right-hand corner. Also, my year-end commentary, the big Q&A, has also had a good response as well. The views, of course, on both of these videos are both way down from what I expected, but with all the YouTube problems, I'm really not surprised. But as far as my diehard listeners go, you guys appreciated it as much as you always do. Showed me a ton of love, and I appreciate it, and I am eternally grateful. So let's not waste any more time and dive into this past week's TV and talk about that. We'll start with Raw. Oh, Raw. Raw. My God. Now, I'm not going to be one of these bandwagon haters. I'm not going to automatically hate Raw, and I'm not going to automatically love SmackDown without analyzing anything. I'm not going to root for Raw to fail. I'm not going to bullshit myself if Raw one week has a better show than SmackDown. I'm going to remain impartial and unbiased, and I am not going to take part in any blind Raw-hating nonsense. We already went through that shit for years with John Cena, and we're going through it again with Roman Reigns. Let's not throw something else on top of the pile. However, I will say in recent weeks that everybody's complaints about Monday Night Raw are very accurate, and I agree. Raw is awful. I mean, Jesus, they panicked, okay? They lost in the ratings a couple of weeks ago to SmackDown, which I don't know why they're so freaked out. This is what they wanted. How can they be freaked out? How can they be upset that their own product beat their own product in the ratings? It makes no fucking sense to me, but they definitely did not like that because, like it or not, even though there's a brand split, Raw still technically is the A show. It's been on Monday nights for 25 years, 35 if you count primetime wrestling and all that shit. And it seemed like they tried to stack this card or stack this show. They had The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels both returning. And they also pre-advertised a United States title match for this show as well. So The Undertaker, a guy that was on SmackDown before Survivor Series, giving that brand's roster a pep talk, is now showing up on Raw for some reason. What's the point? What is the fucking explanation? I understand the guy was never drafted, correct? So I get that he can be on both shows. And as far as I'm concerned, The Undertaker, he's the godfather. He's the leader of that locker room. He's got a legacy like no other. He can go wherever he wants, whenever he wants, which is exactly what he said in his Raw promo. So I really don't mind somebody to the status of The Undertaker can be on both shows. That's fine. But he's just showing up with no explanation. He could have easily made this exact same announcement on SmackDown, but they wanted to put him on Raw. And what Shawn Michaels did was even dumber. So let's backtrack a little bit. I'll get into both of those segments here in a second. I'm not going to go through this show segment by segment at all. I'm just going to generally talk about it. The show opened up with Stephanie giving Mick Foley a performance review. They're like backstage or something, and she's worried that Mick Foley can't produce The Undertaker because I guess in storyline he's the one that worked all this out with him. They're interrupted by Seth Rollins and Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman is in there demanding Roman Reigns or Goldberg. He doesn't get either one. He winds up getting Seth Rollins in a match and a brawl erupts there. The show is really centered around Stephanie just fucking throwing her weight around and being a huge bitch. I go really up and down with Stephanie. Sometimes I think that she is the greatest thing on WWE TV. She really has her moments sometimes. I think she can be an awesome heel, an awesome character. She's believable, especially when she's angry and mad. And some of the things she can do are much like her dad, especially with her facial expressions. You know, Vince had classic facial expressions, and so does Stephanie. So there are times when I really enjoy Stephanie being the heel that she can be, but lately, Stephanie's giving me the opposite effect. I don't like seeing her on TV right now. Sometimes she can be so overbearing, and that annoying fucking voice, and the way she talks down and dehumanizes everybody, and not only emasculates manipulates and humiliates the men, but she does it to the women too. I'm fine with a pompous authority figure talking down to people. We've been seeing it for 20 years, but Stephanie does it in such a way that I don't think it benefits the talent at all. And some of the things she was saying to Sasha and Bayley just made me want to vomit. So lately, I have not been a fan of Stephanie McMahon at all. I don't know what's going on with her and Mick Foley. She's so condescending when she talks to him, and Mick Foley's half nuts too. He's got another new haircut. He shaved his head completely. So basically, he looks the same as he did in the year 2000, only it looks like he has an eating disorder. I'm souring on Mick too as the general manager of Raw. He's had his moments. There's been a few times where I've really liked what he's done, especially some of that early stuff with Sami Zayn in his build with Braun Strowman. Mick kind of got away from being that goofy, fun-loving commissioner into being a guy that took the role a little bit more seriously. Sometimes he was even a flat-out jerk by booking guys in unfair matches and shit like that when he would be upset. So Mick Foley, I think, had his moments, but right now I'm just not impressed with him. And I think he's got a lot going on in his personal life. Of course, he's dealing with that hip issue, and he's trying to get that fixed, and he was even noticeably walking around backstage with a limp when he was quote-unquote looking for The Undertaker. Why don't you check out in the fucking parking lot and look at all those big-ass buses? He's probably in one of those, Foley. He's been botching promos left and right, and I just don't know if his head and his heart are as into this role as he was in the beginning. And you can kind of see the writing on the wall here. They're starting to tease stuff. I mean, they've teased dissension between Stephanie and Foley all the way from the beginning, but you gotta think at some point he's gonna have to be ousted as general manager. They even acknowledged the ratings loss on Monday Night Raw. And Foley is under all these performance reviews, and Stephanie is about to fire him if he doesn't produce The Undertaker, and then Taker shows up at the last minute to save his butt. So at some point, this whole thing is going to come to a head. I don't know what it's going to mean for WrestleMania. I don't know if Foley's going to stick around until WrestleMania and then be gone after that, if he can even wait that long, or if this is something that's going to happen a little bit sooner. You know, WrestleMania season, they got so much other stuff to worry about. I think they should save something like a general manager change for later on in the year, during a time when interest might be a little bit more down and wrestling could use a boost with a big announcement or something. So I'll be interested to see how long this Mick Foley as GM thing lasts, but it looks like it's weakening more day by day, and I'd like to hear all of your ideas. How do you think the whole thing will go down? Now, like I said, The Undertaker did show up after they couldn't find him. Like, when have they ever found The Undertaker? When has The Undertaker ever just been chilling and catering? He's been on WWE TV for 26 years. I think by now they should know how The Undertaker does things. And it was so stupid the way him and Stephanie were in the ring, and Stephanie looked like she was about to fire him, and then finally the lights went out and dong and all that shit. And Undertaker comes out to the ring, gets on the mic, and basically just announces that he's back, which we already knew. He said that before Survivor Series, even though he hasn't been back since then. And also that he is entering his name into the Royal Rumble match. Now that is huge news. For The Undertaker, at his stage in his career, to enter the Royal Rumble can really only mean one thing. Why would you put The Undertaker, who is literally seconds away from retiring, it seems like, in the Royal Rumble if he's not going to win it? So I think Brock Lesnar and Goldberg cancel each other out, set up their big match for WrestleMania, and The Undertaker is the one that's going to win this thing. He's got to be the favorite, you would think. I mean, the Royal Rumble is stacked. I mean, don't forget, you got Braun Strowman in that thing as well. Lots of awesome talent. It's really shaping up to be a pretty star-studded Royal Rumble. You even have wild cards and dark horses in there like The Miz and shit, so anybody could win this thing. But right now, when you look at it, it seems like The Undertaker would be the most likely option here. So when you look ahead all the way to WrestleMania, you can kind of see how this thing might be structured out. I can see John Cena beating AJ at the Royal Rumble and surviving one rematch with him. AJ can move on to somebody else and hopefully have a really awesome match at WrestleMania. I would hate to think that he had this nice long title run and then he had to drop the title only to go into a mid-card match at Mania. I think he deserves better than that, and I'm hoping they do right by him. But if you have John Cena win the belt and then he goes into WrestleMania to defend the title against The Undertaker, and they could even throw in a career versus title type of thing where maybe The Undertaker's career is on the line, and then what do? Does John Cena win and beat him? Holy shit. If you ask me, I say give it to The Undertaker. Maybe you don't even have to have his career on the line. It can just be a title match. And he can win one final WWE World title before he retires. And next year, at WrestleMania 34 that is in New Orleans, the city of the dead, returning to the very city where your sacred streak ended and going into the Hall of Fame in New Orleans at WrestleMania 34, I think could be a nice overall story. And if Undertaker does win the WWE title at WrestleMania, he can drop it pretty quick. He can maybe hold it for 2 months, maybe have some three-ways with John Cena and AJ Styles, and hell, that's something I wouldn't even rule out for WrestleMania. What if The Undertaker wins the Royal Rumble, John Cena wins the WWE title, but AJ Styles isn't going away and he wants his rematch at WrestleMania and they do a three-way at Mania? I think they should save a three-way for a different pay-per-view and do Cena and Taker one-on-one, but that's an option. AJ could still go into WrestleMania as champion as well. Maybe there's a chance that he beats John Cena, or maybe there's a chance that WWE does what I suggested, and that is give John Cena the belt at the Royal Rumble, but take it off of him the very next pay-per-view, and AJ can still go into WrestleMania as champion, and John Cena was able to get that 16th title run, and now the next time he wins one, he'll break the record, and it kind of kills a whole bunch of birds with one stone. You can even have The Undertaker make an appearance or interfere in that match to set up John Cena versus The Undertaker. But right now, it's starting to look that Taker could win the Royal Rumble and challenge Cena for the WWE title. Now, I know we're talking about SmackDown stuff here, but that's fucking WWE's fault. They're the idiots that put The Undertaker on Raw for some reason, so blame them. Moving on to the other legend that returned on Raw, Shawn Michaels came back, showed up. We knew he was really only there to do his movie promotion. Nobody was expecting an announcement of any kind, or I'm returning to the ring, or I'm going to be in the Royal Rumble, or anything like that. I did think that Shawn might mention or announce something about the Royal Rumble. I don't think that he did. It's the 20-year anniversary of him winning the title at that very show in that very building. You would think Shawn Michaels has got to be there. So I really wasn't paying attention to a whole lot of his promo, so maybe he said he would be there and I missed it, but I don't really remember because the promo got stupid. I mean, Shawn's awesome. I love him. I have no problem with him coming back and promoting a movie. Good for him for doing another project. Of course, WWE would be more than willing to help him out, and I'm very happy for him, and he even handled it really well. It's why Shawn Michaels is such a pro. He even called out a fan in the audience saying, you know what, there's nothing you can throw at me that I haven't hit out of the park before, so don't even fucking try to heckle me or sabotage me or fuck with me or what chant me or nothing. I'll make you look like a fool. And even when the fans were kind of booing and yawning at his movie promotion, he's like, come on, haven't I at least earned the right to come out here and plug a movie? Give me a break. So he kind of acknowledged the silliness of the whole thing and did his best to play along with the crowd and didn't allow it to get ugly or anything like that. But even though it didn't get ugly, that doesn't mean it didn't get stupid. Because right when Shawn is in the middle of talking about all this stuff, out comes Rusev with Jinder Mahal and Lana. I'm like, oh fuck, is Rusev going to turn out to be the guy that has to eat every Legend's finisher? He already took a jackhammer and a spear a few weeks ago. Now he's probably going to eat a super kick. Enzo and Cass then show up. Enzo's out there in that silly-ass wheelchair and they cut a promo. I barely paid attention. The only thing I got a kick out of is when Enzo was saying his line, what do we got over here? And then Shawn Michaels goes, ooh, I know this. There are a couple of haters. And I laughed my ass off. That was the only part of the promo that I found funny at all. It somehow set up a match between Cass and Jinder Mahal. Shawn was able to get involved and he was able to throw a super kick, I believe, and Cass beat him and whatever. Very kind of clusterfucky promo. I made some comment on Twitter that when Shawn got there to the show and they told him what he was going to do, he just probably doesn't even give a shit. He probably looked at the script and he just kind of chuckled and he's like, you know what, whatever, fine. Even though I found the segment to be completely stupid, it was still good to see HBK. It's always good to see him. He looks great as always. Really hope to see you at the Royal Rumble. That show in 1997 was a show that I have fond memories of. Wasn't the best Royal Rumble pay-per-view we have ever seen, but it's still a show that I remember well, and I really hope that you make an appearance at the Alamo Dome, Shawn. Please be there. And while you're at it, come to WrestleMania too. So that pretty much takes care of the Undertaker and Shawn stuff. Let's go back to the rest of what happened on Raw. We had a big United States title match, of course. That match was the main event. It was going to be Roman Reigns defending the title against Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens in a 2-on-1 handicap match. And they announced this match a few days before, and I was like, wonderful. This has got to be it. They've been teasing Chris Jericho getting his hands on the U.S. title for a long time, and I think they're going to do some belt switching here. So I'm like, now is the perfect time to take the U.S. title off of Roman Reigns. I hate him as U.S. champion. That belt is the only belt that Chris Jericho has never held, unless you count the Universal title or the purple Cruiserweight belt, or maybe one of the tag belts or something, but really he has held every title possible in pro wrestling. WWE World title, WCW title, Tag Team title, Intercontinental title, Cruiserweight title, Television title, and now finally he wins the United States title for the first time. I actually liked the way the match was booked. It was actually booked twice. The match was actually opening the show, and after Strowman was having his hissy fit backstage, he interrupted and attacked Roman Reigns. Seth Rollins came out to help, and there was a big brawl, and Stephanie came out and put a stop to it all and rebooked the match for later on in the main event, allowing everybody a chance to recover. And I was so relieved to see Jericho win. Even though it makes me nervous about a few other things, I would have hated if Roman Reigns went out there and beat both of them, especially when one of them is the world champion. So I figured in my head that we were going to see a title change this week. I was not surprised by it at all. And how did the finish even go? I'm trying to remember. I think Owens and Jericho hit him with like their tag team finisher, right? Owens set him up for like the pop-up power bomb, but he threw him right into the code breaker. And Jericho got the pin. So congratulations to Jericho. That's a complete set. That's a clean sweep. You've won all the belts. And that's pretty awesome for your legacy, and I couldn't be happier. Unfortunately, what this looks like this means is that Roman Reigns is going to win the Universal title at the Royal Rumble. I am dead on convinced. They wind up building to a match with Chris Jericho versus Kevin Owens at WrestleMania, and that can be the big culmination. They'll do the big breakup. You know, here's what will happen. Owens will lose at the Royal Rumble. Jericho is up in that cage. I don't know if he'll get involved and fuck up and cost Owens the title or not, if he somehow finds a way to get out of there, or if Roman Reigns will defeat Kevin Owens and then Chris Jericho will fuck up and screw over Kevin Owens accidentally in the rematch, because you know Owens will get a rematch either on Monday Night Raw or at the next Raw pay-per-view. And then you'll get the WrestleMania match between Owens and Jericho, and really at this point, that's a match that probably needs to happen. Even though it's sad that Kevin Owens probably won't be involved in a world title match, when you look at everything that him and Chris Jericho have done, how hilariously over they got together, and how they are one of the very few bright spots on Monday Night Raw, I think you really do have to have that match at WrestleMania. So it's looking like Jericho will go into Mania as US champ and probably drop the belt to Kevin Owens, adding another belt to his resume as well. Intercontinental champion, Universal champion, now US champion. So Kevin Owens will be adding to his trophy case in 2017, I have no doubt. And hopefully his days on top and as world champion will not come to an end in 2017. Hopefully he'll be United States champion and get some Universal title shots. But right now, that looks like the way it's all going to go down, which means Roman Reigns is going to be Universal champion. I'm sure the fans are just going to love that, and now he's going to have to defend the belt at WrestleMania. The good news about that is if Roman Reigns goes into WrestleMania as champion, there's a good chance that he will lose the title there. That's actually a good thing. I'd much rather have Roman Reigns going into Mania as champion rather than a challenger when you know he's going to win it. However, with 2 world titles now, I suppose it's perfectly possible that one title could be retained, and that could also be Roman Reigns. So things could actually get worse for the Roman Reigns haters. I feel bad for you. Luckily, Roman Reigns doesn't bother me nearly as much as he bothers all of you guys, and I really don't give a shit at the end of the day. But I'm certainly getting a little nervous, to say the least, about what WWE probably has planned for Roman Reigns, and we've been hearing about the potential match with Braun Strowman. And Strowman is also in the Royal Rumble, so I suppose he could win the Rumble and go on to challenge Roman Reigns at Mania. However, I think WWE can figure out a way to give Braun Strowman the title shot without having him win the Royal Rumble, and they can still have Taker win it. Unless they really wanted to put Strowman over and have Taker and Strowman be the final 2 guys in the Rumble and Strowman tosses him out. Maybe they can throw Sami Zayn in there too. I mean, how cool would that be? I think they could really achieve the same type of success with Sami that they did with Daniel Bryan. I think if they keep booking him right and the fans are behind him and they put him in good situations, I think he can get over to that degree where the fans will start screaming for him. And maybe Sami Zayn can be another new guy to get an opportunity to hold the world title this year in 2017. So I have high hopes for Sami as well. So let me see here. I'm pretty much ready to move on to SmackDown now, but I guess there's a couple of other things I should mention on Raw. I did briefly mention the Strowman and Seth match. That ended in a double DQ. Seth survived that. We had a tag team match with Nia Jax and Charlotte beating Sasha and Bayley. There's been some talk of a Sasha heel turn in the future. She did all that babyface stuff last year and had a few runs with the women's title, so at this point, what's there left to do with her? So yeah, you kind of have to turn her heel, and I can definitely see her eventually kicking the shit out of Bayley. That would actually be good for Bayley, especially if Sasha can get some heat or become hated. You know, it's good for Stephanie McMahon to trash Bayley as well, because Bayley has got this underdog kind of thing going on too, but the fans really aren't into it. I don't give a shit about her at all. So if you put her in situations where the fans genuinely want to root for her, I think that can help her with the audience and the reaction she's been getting. And that tag team match, Nia was really not on Charlotte's page either. I mean, she shoved Charlotte backstage in that whole dumbass segment. So I guess what we're going to wind up having at WrestleMania is either a multi-woman match for the Raw title, or we're going to get Sasha versus Bayley, heel Sasha versus Bayley, and we're going to get Nia Jax versus Charlotte. What about Emma? I haven't mentioned her in a few weeks. They keep running these fucking vignettes. At this point, they're just trolling us now. I think this is going to be a thing. I think we could see these promos all fucking year. They look like they had her set to debut. They announced her debuting 1 week on Raw, and then they didn't do it. And then instead of just rescheduling it for the following week, they've just put it off indefinitely, but they haven't stopped running the fucking promos. This could either end really, really well, or this could be Kurt Hawkins. I mean, I was excited a little bit for Kurt Hawkins with all those dumb promos they were doing for him, and then they botched his debut as well, didn't they? He was supposed to appear, and then he didn't, and he appeared on something else instead, so it could either be really good or really bad, but I hope they have some fun with it. They have all sorts of options here. They could swerve everybody if they just went in a completely different direction than what we were expecting. Like, what if they run all these promos on Raw, and then she debuts on SmackDown? And then you have Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon laughing their ass off that they got free advertising and free promotion on Raw, only to get their hands on the talent themselves because Emma's contract fell through the cracks while she was out with her injury. That could be another reason why Mick Foley could get into trouble. Maybe that's his responsibility to keep his eye on a contract, and he let this one slip. And they spent all this money and time promoting Emma's debut, and she shows up on SmackDown instead. That would piss Stephanie off, and it would put Mick Foley in even more hot water. At this point, I still expect her to debut on Raw. I think she will probably be like the counterpart to Eva Marie on SmackDown. But at this point, every time I see one of those vignettes for Emma's debut, I smile because I don't care that she's not debuting. I get a kick out of seeing these promos every week, and I hope they wait months to fucking do this. I don't care. Sheamus beat Luke Gallows, I think, in a singles match, so I'm guessing we're probably going to get Sheamus and Cesaro versus Gallows and Anderson at the Royal Rumble for the tag team titles. But here's an idea I have, and I forgot to mention this when I was talking about Chris Jericho winning the U.S. title. You know what they should do this week on Raw? Instead of having Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho interact or wrestle Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins for the 9 millionth motherfucking time, they should do something a little bit different and a little bit fun. Let's say Jericho and Owens are backstage admiring their title belts, bragging about their big win last week, and Stephanie walks in and they pitch an idea to her, say, "Hey, Steph, look at all this gold we got. We've been so dominant on Monday Night Raw. You got the Universal Champion and the United States Champion standing right here. We want some more gold. How about you give us a tag team title shot tonight against Cesaro and Sheamus?" Now, they don't have to win the belts, but I think it would be cool if they were able to get a tag team title shot like in the main event. Maybe the week before would be perfect for that, because the way you can do the finish is to have Gallows and Anderson and Reigns and Rollins and Strowman and everybody run out there and do that classic finish that they do for every go-home Royal Rumble Raw, and everybody's just in the ring brawling together. What's going to happen this Sunday? We'll see you then. And the show goes off the air and all that shit. So maybe the tag team title match can be held off for that, for finishing purposes, but I think it's a match that needs to happen on Raw before we get to the Royal Rumble. Now we can move on to SmackDown. Again, I really enjoyed watching SmackDown this week. I loved it. It's so easy to watch when it's 2 hours. I cannot say that enough. The show opened up with a new Intercontinental Champion hosting the Ambrose Asylum. Ambrose is in there with the belt. He's got an alligator head with him that he's named Maurice. So we had Mitch, now we've got Maurice. Maurice seems like a cool guy. Ambrose also enters himself into the Royal Rumble, and that prompts The Miz to come out, who also enters himself into the Royal Rumble, and the two of them finish with a brawl, and Ambrose nails him with the dirty deeds, and that was the end of that. So now we got The Miz and Ambrose in the Royal Rumble, which is cool, because that puts off a title match for a little longer. Don't rush it. If this is the feud you're going with right now, let it play out and see how good it can get. We then had a really nice segment between Natalya and Nikki. Nikki is backstage walking to the ring. She's supposed to have a match with Natalya. Natalya attacks her from behind and injures her knee and throws her into like a garage door and is like, "See ya out there." And then Nikki hobbles out to the ring and then just attacks Natty. The two girls brawl, and a pretty decent brawl as well. Bunch of referees come out. There's a pull apart. Natty chop blocks Nikki, taking her down and puts her in the sharpshooter on the outside of the ring. Really good little piece of business. Building some pretty decent heat between these two ladies, and it's nice to actually care about Natalya again, isn't it? We then got Dolph Ziggler against Kalisto. Dolph, of course, has got this new attitude, and he beat the shit out of Kalisto last week after Kalisto just ran down there to help him out. And Dolph is kind of back to his cocky, arrogant ways, and he lays on Kalisto for a pin a little bit too nonchalantly, and Kalisto's able to roll him over in like a crucifix and get the pin and surprise Dolph with an upset victory. And Dolph just goes nuts, beats the hell out of Kalisto, beats him with a chair. Apollo Crews then comes out to try to make the save, who Dolph was brawling with in the backstage area last week. Dolph kicks his ass and uses a chair on him too, and changes his attitude. I did catch like 5 seconds of talking smack, and I did see Dolph doing an interview with like an NWO shirt. I thought that was cool, but new attitude for Dolph. He's clearly a heel. Some people speculated that he wouldn't be, but right off the bat it seemed pretty damn clear that if he would do that to Kalisto, he has definitely turned heel, and it's pretty much confirmed now. I like the fact that he lost. I like the fact that Kalisto caught him with a quick one, because it just furthers the storyline and angle with Dolph and his frustration and how crazy he can get when he's unhappy. So hopefully this will lead to something nice with Dolph. I say that every time he enters a new program or a new storyline, and it never winds up to be anything that spectacular. So hopefully new heel Dolph will get some traction and make some waves and hopefully win some belts on SmackDown. SmackDown gave us a title match as well. American Alpha defended the titles against the Wyatts. It was Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton, this unstoppable team, or so we thought, and American Alpha actually won. A lot of miscommunication with Luke Harper. He was up on the apron a couple of times. Finally wound up costing Orton and Wyatt the match when Orton got thrown into him, and then Chad Gable rolled up Randy Orton for the pin and scored the victory. And props to Chad Gable for taking that middle rope DDT like a fucking boss. That looked awesome. A lot of these veterans probably love being in there with some of these young NXT kids who can sell their asses off. That looked pretty cool. After the match, Luke Harper and Randy Orton are arguing. Bray Wyatt's trying to calm them down. They start to come to blows, and Luke Harper goes for a kick, and Orton moves out of the way, and he kicks Bray instead, and Bray is really struggling to keep the threads together here. What I like about this is that you really don't know who's going to wind up being ousted or turned on. You would think with Luke Harper fucking up week after week that he's due for a singles run here. Maybe they're going to break him away from Bray, have him go on his own, maybe tweak with his character a little bit. I would love to see that. I'm a big Luke Harper fan. However, you also know that the Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt alliance cannot last forever either. So which one? Is it going to be Orton or Luke to be ousted first? Eventually, I guess all three of these guys will probably be going their separate ways. And one can only assume they're going to go with a Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt match at WrestleMania. At least that's what I'm guessing. I don't know what else they would do unless they did a three-way between these three guys or something like that. I don't know. But it's a shame. I wasn't really ready to see it end yet. I knew there was going to be some dissension and some infighting, and that was going to come, but I was hoping it would come a little bit later on, and Randy Orton and Bray could hold on to the tag team titles for a little while longer before American Alpha or another team took them off. But I like Alpha. I'm happy for them. I definitely think it could have waited, but I'm really, at the end of the day, not going to complain too hard about these guys being tag team champions. They're a great team. We also had a backstage segment with Becky Lynch, Daniel Bryan, and Alexa Bliss, and they're bitching at each other, and Daniel Bryan announces that next week on SmackDown, this is pretty cool because of all the interference by whoever the hell La Luchadora is, he's going to book the two girls in a title match inside of a steel cage. So for the first time ever, we're going to get two women inside of a cage on SmackDown. That's pretty cool. I still don't think it's going to keep La Luchadora out. I mean, these cages are bullshit. Somebody can climb through the ring. They can climb over the top. Somebody can get in there if they want to. But right now, I like the feud, I like Alexa Bliss as champion, and I like the cage match that they've announced next week. Carmella and James Ellsworth are still together. This is just a rehash of Spike Dudley and Molly Holly, or Tajiri and Tori Wilson. They've done this shit a few times. It's pretty funny. Watching Ellsworth run around with her. She had a match against, I don't even know who this woman was, I think CJ Lundy they were calling her, and I loved it. She was dressed like an old school women's wrestler from like the 30s with the hair and the fucking bathing suit and the whole deal. And I'm like, why not? We could use a gimmick like that. And just to hear the announcer's reaction to the sight of her. JBL actually made me laugh when he was like, what the hell is that? And then I think Otunga was like, it looks like Carmella's beating up somebody's aunt. And they had all these funny one-liners to say. I mean, one of my biggest problems with women's wrestlers, it's not so bad today. It was really bad 10 years ago. But they all kind of look alike because they're all just like these skinny little stick models and they're all really pretty. I like getting some different blood in there. We've got the big giant Nia Jax right now. Naomi's a little bit different. So is Bayley. So to get a gimmick like that, somebody who, you know, dresses like that, I think was pretty funny. She lost, by the way. Carmella did wind up tapping her out, but I definitely got a kick out of the segment. And the main event, of course, was John Cena taking on Baron Corbin. And this was a pretty decent match. John Cena cut a good promo backstage. You had AJ Styles on commentary. And what I liked about this match is it just wasn't a whole lot of bullshit. And that's what I feel so good about SmackDown, is it's structured so much better. It doesn't feel like a clusterfuck. They're not making you feel like you need to look in a bunch of different directions at once. It's not confusing you. It's just nice and simple and well-rounded show. You had a main event tonight with AJ Styles on commentary. No interference from AJ. He sat there and commented on the match, and John Cena had a hard-fought match with Baron Corbin, a young up-and-comer that I'm sure will wear a title belt one day in the future in WWE, and John Cena beat him. No complaints, nothing wrong with that. He's got a title shot against AJ at the Rumble. He's one of the most successful wrestlers of all time. Of course he's going to beat this kid with his finisher and pin him 1-2-3, which he did. Had no problem with it at all. Thought it was fine. And the show ended with John Cena and AJ just staring each other down, and I liked it. Simple and to the point without wasting a shit ton of time. I still think last week's SmackDown show was probably better than this week's, but overall I still think SmackDown was better than Raw, for sure. Or at least I enjoyed it better. I don't want to even get into that debate, oh, which show was better? It's all about whichever one you felt was better. Some people, more of their favorite guys might be on Raw, so they might prefer that. Some of us might prefer SmackDown. It's pretty amazing to me that the show that has Randy Orton and John Cena on it is the better show, but it's true. SmackDown is rolling right now, and I should switch my schedule around. I've been off pretty much on Mondays for years. I try to be off most Mondays to be home to watch Raw live and tweet with all of you and everything, but I should switch that to Tuesdays. So just to recap briefly here, our updated Royal Rumble card, of course, we have the 2 title matches, AJ Styles defending against John Cena, Kevin Owens defending against Roman Reigns. We have Charlotte defending the Raw Women's title against Bayley. We have Rich Swann defending the Cruiserweight title against Neville. And we have the Royal Rumble match itself. I'm guessing we're going to get a tag team title match added to this, and that might be it. There's probably not much more room for more than 6 matches if one of those matches is the Royal Rumble match itself. So I'm not expecting much more to be added to the Royal Rumble unless they do some pre-show matches or kickoff matches or whatever. But we still got a couple of weeks to talk about that, so there will be much more Royal Rumble speculation coming up in the future. I have got to get out of here, but I still have a few other things that I want to talk about, so I'll mention it quickly. I did mention earlier on in the commentary when I was talking about The Undertaker that WrestleMania 34 would be in New Orleans. They're going back there after only 4 years, which I think is crazy, but also kind of cool. They made the official announcement in a big press conference. Of course, Raw was in New Orleans. I think SmackDown was Baton Rouge, so they're all in the area anyway. They revealed the logo and they did everything. So I'm perfectly fine with that. I have fond memories of WrestleMania 30, and I would love to see what they do at WrestleMania 34, and it should be a lot of fun. And right now, I'm going to try to make that trip. I know I said I was going to make Orlando, but I don't think that's going to happen because I got a vacation coming up just a couple of days after WrestleMania, and I really don't think I can do both. But next year in New Orleans, I'm going to pencil that one in. It would be fun if I was able to go to that. But they had The Undertaker there, and Stephanie, and Triple H, and Roman Reigns, and Charlotte, and a few other people. So they did the big press conference, and Mania's going back to New Orleans. So good for New Orleans, and they made a big pitch to get the show again this quickly, and it worked. So good for them. There's also been some informal announcements and rumors that Ravishing Rick Rude is going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. He's going to be one of the first people to be announced, probably him and Diamond Dallas Page. Wonderful. I have no problem with that at all. It's about fucking time. I've done many Q&As over the years, and I know I've mentioned Rick Rude multiple times when it comes to who should you put in the Hall of Fame questions. So you all know my opinions on Rick Rude, one of my absolute favorites. I wish he was alive to accept his induction in person. Would be really awesome to hear some of his comments and some of the things he had to say. I mean, don't forget, this guy did something that nobody has ever done, ever, and it's really virtually impossible to do what he did, and that is that he appeared on Raw and Nitro on the same night, right in the middle and the height of the Monday Night Wars, when it was at its hottest time, at its peak. You had something that significant take place. He left and went to Nitro and showed up on a live Nitro, going head-to-head with a taped Raw, full beard on one show, clean-shaven on another, and it was fucking crazy. Still amazing to think back that actually happened. 20 years ago, this year, that took place. Unreal. Some of you were also asking me if I saw that new show on the WWE Network, Bring It to the Table. I did. I watched a little bit of it with that Rosenberg guy and JBL and Paul Heyman. I liked it okay. They were touching on some pretty funny issues there, talking about the fans and shit. So, I don't think they should be using that show to shit on the fans, especially when they're paying $9.99 for the fucking network. But it was kind of like a takeoff of Pardon the Interruption, except not as well done. But there was a few parts of it that I liked, and I like Paul Heyman's attitude and personality, and I think it can be a good show. But right now, I don't know if I'm even going to be able to find the time to watch that thing religiously or not. Yes, I am aware also of Chris Hero returning to NXT. Hopefully this next run can be a little bit more successful for him and he can find his way up to the main roster at some point. I sure hope so. And of course, a lot of you have been asking me if I saw the WrestleKingdom 11 pay-per-view. No, I did not see the pay-per-view, but I did see the Okada versus Omega match. I had to watch that. It's all anybody was talking about. And I watched it, and I was fucking amazed, and I was on the edge of my seat. And wow, yes, it was an amazing match. Greatest match of all time, which is what a lot of people were saying. I don't think it's the greatest match of all time. I take into a lot of factors when it comes to the greatest match of all time, not just what the guys are doing, but where they are, what they're fighting for, the type of feud, the type of show, how big the crowd is, the crowd involvement, how important the show is, all sorts of shit. So I don't know if I'd put it up there with the greatest match of all time, but fuck was that good. As soon as it was over, I told myself, I'm going to watch this thing again. It was awesome, and I still haven't watched it a second time, but I need to. That was some pretty entertaining shit, and to be honest, I don't watch a whole lot of Japanese wrestling. I only watch it when I hear about a match like this, or if anything is making any sort of news or headlines in Japan, I'll usually check it out. So I'm not completely illiterate when it comes to Japanese wrestling, but I really don't follow it that closely either. But I tell you what, watching that match made me so proud to be a wrestling fan. Those were some insane bumps. That backdrop onto the table, motherfucker, What were they thinking out there? Okada landed on the back of his neck at one point that I cannot believe he was not paralyzed. That was absolutely insane. I would love for the WWE to try to have one match like this on every WrestleMania show. Maybe can kind of fill the void that the big Money in the Bank match left when you would always have guys diving off of ladders and shit. If you had one match per show where you put a couple of cruiserweights in there, they could do that this year with Neville and some really kick-ass opponent, and you put them out there and say, go out there for 25 minutes and do whatever it is you want, and try to outdo something like we saw at WrestleKingdom 11. If they were able to do that once every WrestleMania with a mid-card or mid-level match or a cruiserweight match or something like that, and give the fans a match of that magnitude with that many spots and that much storytelling, I think would be such a nice thing to look forward to on a WrestleMania show, and it can really help launch guys' careers, especially if they go out there and steal the show. So I would love the WWE to give some of these mid-card and younger and more athletic wrestlers a fucking opportunity at WrestleMania to do something like we saw at WrestleKingdom 11. And finally, before I get out of here, I just want to acknowledge that we did have a wrestling death this week. Rex King, he worked in the WWE in the mid-90s as Well Done. I think they were managed by Harvey Whippleman. He was Timothy Well, that was his name. Pretty stupid tag team, but pretty decent talent and a good hand. And he was only in his mid-50s. I think he was sick with kidney failure or something like that. So very sad to hear. Never like to hear about wrestlers passing away, so my thoughts are with his family and loved ones. So that is it for me. I will probably be up here like normal next week to talk about Raw and SmackDown, although if both shows completely suck, I might skip it, so just a little bit of advanced warning there. I do have a pay-per-view review coming up that I'm probably going to have up around the 20th, 25th, something like that, somewhere in there, so keep a lookout for that in a few days. And in all likelihood, I will catch you all next week. Until then, peace.